So today is the 14th of August and I'm here in Southernhay today. In front of me you can see this absolutely stunning tree. So hopefully the camera's positioned okay. This tree is huge. It's, that I can tell, in Southernhay, it's probably the biggest tree here. So this tree in front is a London plane. So this is actually a hybrid tree of the American sycamore and the Oriental plane. As the name suggests, London plane. If you were to go to London, this is the most numerous street tree. They are fantastic trees. They can cope with street pollution and all the other various nasties that are in the air thanks to all our vehicles. And like I say, they can survive compacted soil, poor air quality. They're really tough trees, and like I say, when you let them grow to their sort of natural size, they get really big. So I have done a bit of study on this tree. I actually studied it a few years ago on my previous job. I used to get the extra early bus sometimes and would come here in the morning and do a bit of study on this lovely tree. But as I said, I haven't studied it for a while, so today has been a bit of a refresher for me. So as I said, this lovely London plane. I mean, looking at the actual area in Southernhay, this particular green stretch is fantastic for wildlife. There's lots of different species of trees here. I'm not going to focus on all the other trees, we're just going to look at this lovely London plane. So the actual genus of tree is Platanus. As I said, it's not a native tree, it's a hybrid. So now that we've got a sort of a basic overview of the tree, we'll have a closer look and you can see some of the really cool characteristics now. I have to put my little bag here. So you can tell just by the size of the tree here, this is a big tree. Now, probably the most characteristic feature of London plane is the bark. It looks a little bit like army camouflage on some pieces, especially here. This is lovely. You know, it's sort of typical army green camo. It just peels off like that. And this is probably why they're such good street trees, because they can peel sections of their bark off relatively easily, and then obviously all the trapped carbon and pollution can just be shed. Actually the bark's quite thin, but it's just that it's got all these different lovely olive greens, browns. It's such a piece of artwork. It's beautiful. I mean, just being under the canopy of this ginormous tree really sort of puts things into perspective, that it's these lovely creatures that keep us alive, and we certainly need to do more for them. So as I said, very similar to sycamore as well, the bark, so it can be misidentified just by the bark alone, because sycamore bark is similar to London plane. So we'll have a look at the leaves now. So hopefully I'm going to find some nice low leaves. Be even better if I can find some of the fruit on the tree, but not sure if we will. Okay. So luckily there are some leaves I can reach. I'll just put my stuff down. I've got all my stuff here. Okay, lovely. So as I said, August now, it won't be long until we start seeing more leaf shed. You can already see that there is a small amount of leaf litter on the ground. So just looking at the branches and the twigs, brilliant. We've actually got one of the young pieces of fruit here, so we can sort of roughly go through that. But like I say, you can tell these, I mean, look at the size of my hand. These leaves are big. They look similar to I would say a Norway maple or sycamore leaf, whereas Norway maple leaves are smaller and they're more pointy. Sycamore leaves are more rounded and again smaller. So really, with a London plane, you can usually tell by the end leaves, again absolutely huge, and then the actual arrangement as well. You can see the underside hopefully there. So what we want to do now is try and have a look. You can actually probably see more. I might have to move around, but here is what most people see on a London plane, are these very strange balls that hang down. Now this one here, because of the time of the year, this is a young female fruit. I mean, technically they're all female, but so during the spring the tree will make thousands and thousands of flowers that are basically miniature ones of these. The only difference is the female flowers are bright, dazzling red and fairly large. The male flowers are basically smaller versions. I mean, that potentially might even be one there. And then, like I say, typically not as bright red. They're like a dull red green. So we call this monoecious when you've got male and female flowers on the same tree but different parts. So as I said, this one here will eventually mature, and then during the winter time, instead of being green, you can see that, it will then mature into the structure that will house all the seeds, and then they're dispersed by the wind. So this will turn into like a brown fluffy ball, much bigger, almost the size of a golf ball. And that's the other thing with the actual arrangement of the flowers, is typically the female flowers, which again mature into these, and then eventually the big brown fuzzy balls, which then release all the seeds. But the male flowers, which again, their only job during the spring is to release the pollen, which then obviously pollinates these and hopefully makes, you know, fertile seed. But the actual male flowers, when they are there, are typically on different parts of the twigs and branches, so they tend to be further back. So you tend to find that the female ones will be at the front, and then further back the male. And they normally are in arrangements of 1 or 3, but quite often you'll see a pair. Let's see if we can find some more. See, look, that might be, you can just about see that one there. Sorry, I'm just going to pick up my equipment. Let's have a look if there's any more. See, there we go. There's one that's brilliant. Actually, this is a really good example because you're actually seeing the stages, but I can't pull the branch down without breaking it. I don't want to do that. So it's a bit difficult. I hope the camera can pick it up, but it's almost like 2, but it's sort of like you can see the different green, and eventually it goes like brown. And hopefully, if I can find a more mature one, you'll actually see it. So here you go. That's more what you'd normally find, like a pear hanging down there. I think at the moment, with the time of the year, that's pretty much all we're going to see. Maybe on the ground litter we might see some more. Again, you can see some more of the young female fruit. Ah, this is better. Look, you can probably easy to see with the light, but there's quite a few here. As I said, what you probably find is a lot of the male ones, once they've shed the pollen, they will tend to, the tree will just cut them off with scissor cells, I believe. It's only the female ones that need to retain on the tree, because obviously they've got to mature so they can then create the seeds. Now, the other thing about London plane, again, look at this, it's brilliant when you see trees like this. We need to see more big trees like this. For people who have allergies to pollen and other airborne particles, unfortunately London plane during the spring, not actually the flowers, it's the leaves. The very young leaves have like a very, very fine felt almost, basically lots of tiny hairs. Now the problem is that as the leaves get bigger, they will lose that and shed it, which of course is released straight into the air. So for some people, London plane trees can cause breathing difficulties. I mean, I'm perfectly fine myself, but as I said, it's just something I've read and researched, that some people do complain of breathing difficulties during the spring. So again, not all year round, it's only when the tree is sort of going through that initial growth of getting young leaves and beginning to prepare for the flowers. So I think we've talked roughly about the type of the tree. So like I say, monoecious, male and female flowers on the same tree but different parts. It's a broadleaf deciduous tree, so that means that the leaves are shed during the cold season, autumn, winter. I can't pin it down to months now because of climate change. Things are changing. It's very difficult to be able to be accurate with these things anymore, so we just simply have to refer to it as the cold season now. But anyway, deciduous means that it'll have all the leaves during the spring and the summer, and then it begins to shed them during the autumn time, and then it's just the sort of bare canopy during the winter time. I'm trying to think of some other cool facts about London planes. So we've talked about the very great benefits they have as street trees, just because they can survive in urban conditions very well. Typically disease free, as a rule. You know, like if you compare to some trees, I mean, we could talk, just as an apple tree is more likely to pick up various types of disease compared to a tree like this. Again, I wouldn't really be planting apple trees in an urban setting anyway, but just as an example. So I think what we need to look at now is more about this particular tree and not the species. So I did a bit of measuring up. So the tree, when I used my tape measure from the Tree Council, the diameter, so sort of like that way, is about 1.7 meters, and circumference, not that, I mean, look, I can't do it, I'd need 3-4 adults around this trunk, is approximately 5.3 meters if we were to do it at around sort of like breadth height. So now we know sort of how big the tree is in that dimension. The actual height of the tree, when I measured it, is about 33 meters, give or take. Again, it's quite difficult to pin it. I did try measuring it, of course, the road behind me and cars going up and down, I had to actually measure it right from over there. I did it from about 30 meters because actually it's more accurate, I find, having at least 25 plus meters when measuring a tree. So we know it's about 33 meters, which is massive. That's a really tall tree. Again, really big trunk. The other thing is, how old is the tree? Now this is always a tricky one. Now I'm basing this, because it's a plain tree, on just some basic online tree calculators, and again it's a hybrid, so hybrids can be a bit more tricky because their growing patterns are more difficult. So a good example of that is lime trees. We have in this country the native small leaf lime and large leaf lime, but then there's a natural cross called the common lime, and interestingly the common lime, which is a hybrid of those two lime trees, will actually grow faster and taller than its parent trees. So that's how hybrids can be quite tricky sometimes. But either way, I've based this just on a plain tree. I would say it is about 250 years old. At least 200 years old, but I would say more like 250 based on what I got from the tree. So this tree has a lot of history in it. I must admit I haven't checked if it's got a TPO on it. I would be amazed if it doesn't. However, Southernhay, as far as I'm aware, all of this green space here is the Exeter City Council, I believe, and they don't always TPO their trees, so that's something I will need to look at. As I said, it might well have a TPO, I just can't recall if it did or not. But yeah, so we've got this lovely tree. Really, my opinion, the status of this tree, it should definitely have a TPO, should have some sort of recognition. It's definitely a fantastic tree, and as I said, if you think about that, 250 years old, you know, that's a lot of human generations, and think about the countless people that have been under this tree or near it, and yeah, a lot of history there. So, like I say, that's this very, very short study of this fantastic London plane tree. It's been a real pleasure, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I might do a bit more study on it. Thanks for watching. So this is part 2 of the London plane study at Southernhay. This will be much quicker than the first one. This is more just as a sort of visual assessment, as I was more jabbering about the tree. So this will be hopefully looking more at the actual tree itself. It's a shame when people put all their rubbish at the bottom. But anyway, as a whole, it's a very clean area. And like I say, you can see with the ground litter just how important the cycle of a tree is. All that nutrition going back into the ground. Nothing gets wasted with nature. The human race could certainly learn a trick or two from these great trees. So I imagine this is where people have just swept all the debris here, which isn't a problem really, because it's not causing an issue. Again, you've got that lovely army camo bark, and again, just look at the size of this fantastic tree. Again, as best as I can measure it, about 33 metres tall, around 250 years old, give or take. Fantastic tree. Absolutely stunning. Right, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure doing this short study. London plane, brilliant tree.